is like 10 seconds
There we
delayed.
go.
The broadcast is I didn't
Nice.
realize it said
Live,
that.
3
You're
seconds. There
live.
you go.
We are here. Welcome to episode 17, season 3 of AA for Entrepreneurs. Do we even need to introduce ourselves since we have name tags the whole time? I mean, I guess I'm Adam. I'm Adam.
I mean, you could
And
just
I'm
introduce
Andrew.
our guest.
And
Give
this
them
is
a
our
brief little
special
introduction
guest
and
today.
then let them introduce themselves. You know what I mean?
True that.
Today, we have Eric Easterday. Is the
I
owner?
need to introduce myself. Huh?
Yeah, he's the owner of ReadMore Books here in Taunton, and he
Hey,
does
listen,
a slew of other things
I'm losing
too.
you a little bit. I just lost sound.
Uh-oh.
Oh no,
Just
Adam,
lost
you
our
got
man.
me the sound.
There you go.
Yeah,
Sound
I can
is
still
back.
hear you.
Can
Yep.
you guys hear me? I can't.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Andy, I can't hear you, man.
Uh-oh.
Not at all. You can't hear me.
That's right. Yeah, it's a little slow.
Starting off with some technical difficulties. I can hear Andrew.
Eric,
Sorry,
can you hear me
Can
now?
you hear Andrew? You can't hear Andrew?
Yes.
Very
can.
weird. This happened last time too.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder since
And
we
I
lost
can-
the other guy.
Well, no, he's still
And
here, just in the background, just so that because we all have headphones on.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So I can hear you. I can hear you, Adam. I can't hear Andrew though.
That's
That's very
very odd.
weird. Isaac,
Trevor-
can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. You ever see that? You ever see Finding Nemo? Right where what's his name was
man.
talking
This is
to
gonna
the
be
dad,
hard.
and he's like, I can see his lips moving. I know he's trying to tell me something. When he's trying to explain what to do when he gets out of the current.
So what?
You remember that movie?
Andy, you can hear me, right?
I can hear everybody just fine.
So
Isaac, come out of the
And Andy,
woodwork.
can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can
No,
hear
no,
all
yes.
of you guys.
That is very strange.
So it's got to be something between you two.
Hold on. I'm going to try
can
removing both of
Isaac-
you from stream and then
There we go.
adding you back.
Sorry about technical difficulties right in the beginning of the podcast, guys.
Isaac, can you hear Eric?
Yeah.
Sorry, man. It's probably me. I'm the oldest one in this crowd. I'm not a Facebook liver all the time.
No, hello? I know my voice is on the Facebook. It's just it's not relaying to Eric.
You guys are like proficient at stuff, so probably me. I think you guys and me.
Yeah, it's not Eric. It's not your fault. You can't hear me, but it's not your fault. It's some sort of connection lag.
Now I can hear you. Now I
can.
can hear you. Yeah, you just came back.
Oh, there we
Okay,
go.
So now I can hear you.
Isaac did it
Yeah.
somehow.
Isaac is amazing. Thank you guys for being patient and still watching this.
Oh, sweet.
So, Eric, now that we're back, why don't
How do we know they're still
I
watching?
can see 11 people watching right now.
Cool.
While
cool.
now that we got the technical difficulties figured it out, why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Oh boy, what
Throws
would
it on.
what anybody want to know? I own the ReadMore Bookstore in Taunton, Massachusetts. I've owned that for 13 years now. Let's see, I was in mortgage business since 2001, so I've seen a lot go on there. I am father of 3. I got an 18-year-old son who's graduating Bristol Plymouth this year, or I guess he almost seems like he's done now because they're not going back to school. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I have a 13-year-old daughter in just a couple weeks. So now I'm partnered up with you guys, and we're making some good things happen for sure.
Yeah, it's actually been amazing that in the
By the way, I forgot to mention, I'm also a really big fisherman. So if anybody knows me at all, they know that I plan a lot of my days around the good tides.
You just caught a big fish today, right at the Taunton River.
I did. Yeah, I caught a fish today. Yeah, I did. Right in the Taunton River. That was it was a nice fish, about 30 inches, weighed probably about 14, 15 pounds. And that's pretty much what takes up a lot of my spare time sometimes at this time of year for sure. Yep, I spend a lot of time in the
I
Taunton
can't
River.
even believe that there's stripers in the Taunton River. You taught me something completely new with that one.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it's not really a big secret, but enough that, not a lot of people would think that. And believe it or not, I've caught fish over 30 pounds in that river.
What?
Wow.
And what really yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's not a common occurrence, but it's not an uncommon occurrence in the sense that, I might go a year or two without catching some over 30 pounds in the river, but it'd be very rare to go more than 3 or 4 years without catching one over that in that river. And I have some friends that are better fishermen than me, spend more time on that river, and they catch a lot of fish close to that every single year.
Sheesh. Learn something new about Taunton
Yeah.
every day, I feel like.
That's great. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, there's bald eagles down there too, right? There's a lot of osprey.
Bald
There's
eagles.
bald eagles down there.
You're blowing my mind
Bald
right now.
eagles. Yeah, bald eagles. In fact, I saw a couple of years ago, and I got pictures of it. I saw a bald eagle that was flying probably 15 or 20 feet above the water line, and 2 osprey were attacking it, dive bombing it from above.
What?
Because it was getting too close to their nest. Yeah, it was getting too close to their nest. It was probably first week of June when I saw that. In fact, weeks ago, I filmed 2 seals to my boat.
In
Seals
the Taunton
are a common
River.
occurrence in the river. I don't know if you know that.
Get
in
out
the
of
Taunton
here.
River,
Really?
seals.
That's
I could show you the video. Yeah, he was right near. I'm not big on seals because they eat a lot of the fish that I'm trying to catch.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. They swam right next to my boat. They're probably 25 feet from my boat. Yep, that's not uncommon. There's sturgeon in that river, which are protected. You're not supposed to catch them or keep them if you do catch them by accident. But sturgeon, Atlantic sturgeon can get up to 100 pounds.
What? In the Taunton River?
And they have been caught in that river. Yes, in the Taunton River. Yes.
That is blowing my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe it or not, that believe it or not, listen, that river has really cleaned up. So whoever's in charge of cleaning the water systems up, that water has cleaned itself up quite nicely over the past decade. And in fact, 2 years ago, the state of Massachusetts cleared Somerset and Dayton for shellfish consumption, which means it's clean enough to eat if you pull it out of there. Now the problem with that is you're pulling a lot of shellfish out of the it's real muddy.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom's real muddy. So you're pulling shellfish out of the mud and they don't really cook well. So what a lot of people don't realize is there's a transplant program that goes on. The state of Massachusetts Department of Marine Fisheries actually send boats up to where the Asona and the Taunton split together, and they drag that area for oysters. And they take the oysters and they transplant them down the Cape. They bring them down the Cape. They transplant them in a sandy, clean area. They give them a month or two to clean up, and then they harvest them for consumption.
I am literally mind blown right now.
Yeah, I'm just imagining
Yeah, little known
seals
fact
swimming
about the
past
Taunton River.
44.
Yeah.
Did you guys not hear about the dolphin pod that was in there 3 years ago? It was dolphins. It was a pod of 5 dolphins. No joke. 5 dolphins. There were 2 adults and 3 babies that ran all the way up to the Dighton Rock.
Oh my God! No, I had no idea.
What is
And
life, dude? If my fiance heard that, she'd be so pissed.
Oh well,
did you hear about the shark? Really actually, that the same year there was a shark that beached itself. There was a shark that beached itself at Dighton Rock 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, a shark. No joke.
Wow.
I've had a long day.
In fact,
I don't know.
That was when I was that's when I was the assistant harbor master. So I was the assistant harbor master in Dighton for a while. And when I was the assistant harbor master, the harbor master actually had to call what's his name, Scommel, Richard Scommel, maybe the guy the shark guy out of Boston. His last name is Scommel. He had to call him and say, "Hey, listen, we've identified this shark that beached itself." And he said, "No, it was just a regular sand shark. It was not, like a white shark or anything like that." But he did identify, and he said that's very unusual.
Hey, Fico, you said you always get stuck commenting by yourselves on the one you share. If you guys are doing watch parties, if you shared this and started a watch party and your comments aren't showing up, you have to comment on the original post, the Urban Acres Facebook Live post, and your comment could pop up on here. or if you're watching on my Twitch, the What Did Adam Say Twitch, or on the 100 Zone YouTube, which is changing to Urban Media soon, as soon as we get a logo made and all that fun stuff. But yeah, if you're watching on either the Twitch, the YouTube, or the Urban Acres Facebook, you can get your comment on the screen. So let's have some fun. It's always a good time
There
at
he
night.
goes. It's a baby fucking whale. Oh my God. Jake, call the aquarium.
Did you see the one with the mooses too? It's like a fucking National Geographic episode.
Oh, what the fuck is that? So wait, I
That's
want to go
too
back to these
funny.
seals.
Yeah.
Now, are we talking
That was
seals
for the
swimming
sunfish. I don't know if you
around
guys know that, right? The whole video.
near Dean Street? Like seals near Dean Street, or do they stay
sorry,
like
I'm
close to
losing
the mouth of the river there, like near Battleship Cove?
No, so I was in Dighton. So I was near the Dighton Rock area, right? Do you know where
Yeah.
Dighton Rock is? It's
Oh, yeah.
Dighton Rock's actually over in Berkeley, right? So you got a little park on that side, but it's kind of in that area. So I fish from that spot. I generally don't go as far up as the bridge, and they are seen that far up as the Berkeley Bridge.
All right, yeah.
But I'm fishing from basically the area down to the split, past the Somerset boat ramp, and then I fish down towards Fall River, and then the entrance to Mount Hope Bay.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, those seals are that far up the river for sure. Yeah.
Wow, crazy. How long?
Yeah.
How long
In
have you
fact,
been
it's-
fishing for?
I remember years ago there was one that was injured. How long have I been fishing for?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, 40 plus years. I mean, I just turned 49, so I've been fishing since I was little.
Wow,
I
it
fished
started
the
with your
Taunton River
dad.
since. Yeah. Yep. Started on freshwater ponds, going camping. Migrated to striped bass. Once I actually saw how big those striped bass get, that's really got hooked, and I started focusing on saltwater.
Oh,
I'm almost exclusively saltwater now. Every once in a while, I'll grab a freshwater pole and a canoe and head out into the water, but otherwise, it's saltwater.
oh my God! Saltwater is a whole different animal. Like I remember in 8th grade, I was on a Captain John whale watch fishing trip, and somebody caught this big fish, and it snapped her line. And me being the optimistic person that I am, opportunistic person I am, I guess I should say, I ran over there and dropped my lure into there. It was just a hook with a sinker on it with some bait. And I think I got the same fish because I had both my feet like up on the sides of the boat, like railing the fish in.
Yeah.
And when I held it up at my eye level, the tail was hitting the ground and folding. Like that's a whole different animal than freshwater. I need to do that.
Yep.
I need a deep sea
You know,
fishing trip.
I'm. Yeah. Well, those are a lot of fun, right? And so the party boats are tough sometimes because there's so many people, right? So I'm not really a big crowd person when I'm out fishing. I like to fish generally away from the crowd, unless there's just a ton of fish in one spot and it just happen to fish, with a lot of guys. Believe it or not, I'm a shallow water fisherman. So a lot of those fish, the fish that you saw today, that was caught in 8 feet of water.
What?
It's not even. Yeah, those striped bass, they'll move up tight to the shoreline, and what they do is they push the bait up close into the weeds. So so that's what happens. But it's a lot of time, right? So I have a lot of people hit me up to say, hey, listen, can you take me out? Can you do some fishing together? And I love to do that. Absolutely. I love to get people into fishing. I love to show them what I know about fishing. But it takes a lot of time. You got to put a lot of time in. You got to have a lot of days where you don't catch anything at all before you start catching those big fish consistently. Because over time, it's like anything, right? When you put your time in and you learn and you're willing to learn, and you write things down and you study what you did last year, you study what you did a couple of years ago, patterns start to emerge. It's like in business, right? When you're trying to run a business, you can't just run a business by doing the same thing all the time. You got to shift gears a little bit, and you start to see patterns. Certain times of the year, you sell more online than you do retail, and you sell a different type of product sometimes at different times of the year. So if you track that data, I mean, data is everything, right? You've heard the saying probably that data is consuming the world, and it really is. It's all about behavior.
Yep.
So in fishing world, if you've logged your trips, it was good because of X, Y, and Z, right? There's a lot of bait around. It's not just grabbing your fishing pole and going out of the water. And sometimes it can be that simple if you're just looking to have fun. But patterns emerge. What bait's around, what's the wind doing? Is there a storm rolling in? That sort of thing. So
yeah, going back
anyway,
to data,
I find that fascinating. A lot of fun.
I just want to make a point about data. Somebody told us that our data as a company was worth more than our company. And I kind of was like, huh? Like that's how powerful, having hundreds and thousands of customer information and data available
It is powerful.
But you don't sell it if
Yep.
you're a good company. It's one of those quandaries. Like, it's worth money,
Yeah,
but you shouldn't sell it, I don't
consumer
think.
behavior consumer behavior is really what the value is there, right? Because people want to know how consumers behave. What do they do? What are they doing? When are they buying? How are they buying? What are they buying? So it's consumer behavior. So you hear stories about, this 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid sometimes, and they started this company and they sold it for $5 million. Well, it probably wasn't even really a company. It was just a really good concept for a company. And they maybe came up with the idea or the software for something, and it gets bought by an Apple or a Google or somebody else because, one, they don't want the competition for it, but two, they want what you just came up with. That's what they want. You don't have to have 10,000 customers. You don't have to have $1 million in sales. You just have to have a really good idea first, and they liked it and they buy it and they say, oh, that can gather data. I can remember when I was actually working on a mobile app with a guy at Apple for retail, for book retailers actually. And he pointed me, he really opened my eyes to something when he said, your app isn't what's important. It's the data that it gathers that has all the value. And I really didn't see the value in it until then. He said, what you're capturing is consumer behavior. He says, and when you capture that consumer behavior, that has the value, right? So I hadn't even looked at it that way. I'm like, oh, this can generate sales, and I can sell more books, and I can drive more people in the shop and do those things. He goes, no. He says, you're tracking behavior. He said, that's what the value is. And I was like, wow. And that was the difference between a guy that's working at Apple as an executive and somebody who's not. That's really what it was. They get that data part of things. So that's big.
Yeah. No.
Can you briefly go over? Actually, it doesn't have to be brief, but can you touch up on your professional career, like starting up your first job and then move steadily toward where you're at now in owning a bookstore?
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so I would say I worked my way through college at the bookstore, right? So I've been at the bookstore really. I graduated high school in '89, and I had worked my way through college at the bookstore. When I graduated college, I had a management degree, and I really didn't see myself as a manager. And my father had given me some advice he said, look, you're really a people person. You need to be in front of people. You need to be talking to people. He said, so you'd be really, really good in sales. And so I thought of it, and I agreed with him. And I actually started with Cisco Food Service. So I had a friend who was there, and he said, yeah, you definitely belong in sales. Cisco Food Service is hiring salespeople. So why don't you send in your resume to, the director of sales or something along those lines? And I said, I forget the director of sales. I said, I want the director of marketing. I want the VP of marketing. I don't want to just throw my resume in there with 100 other people and then have it get looked through real quick and maybe they shuffle it away. So I actually made a couple of calls. I found out who was in charge of all sales departments, and I sent him my resume. And I said, you want me to sell for you? I need to be on your team. So anyway, he called me directly and he said, why should you be on my team? I said, willing to learn. I'm willing to work hard. I'm not afraid to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, why don't you come down and chat with me? So I did. So I went in, chatted with him, started Cisco Food Service. It was really funny too, because one of the questions was, what do you know about food? And I said, well, I know I like to eat it. I know I like to cook it. I know I like to eat it.
Most important part.
And he's like, oh, that's great. I said, but I have an open mind and I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to ask when I don't know something. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to find out. So anyway, he brought me on board and I was there. They shipped me up to Nashua. I was in Nashua, New Hampshire for a couple of years. Selling in that area, it was awesome. It was really fun. And then as I was progressing there in my first job, I kind of looked at my portfolio, and food sales is really a tough grind. Low margins. You got to work really, really hard for what you earn, which is no problem. That's okay. That's a great discipline to have. When I looked at my ledger, I realized there was more margin in some products than others. So what I decided to do was move off to a company that focused only on those. And the name of that company was Unisource, right? And they sold a lot of paper products. When I got out, it was chemicals and paper products, right? And you could sell those in food service accounts, big food service accounts, and make more money. So I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. So I moved over to Unisource. Then Unisource, a year or two later, got bought by Georgia Pacific, and Georgia Pacific had a food packaging division. So then I kind of kept the food theme, and I started to sell food packaging at Unisource. And I was selling it like Cape Cod potato chips and some of that stuff. I was selling big systems that, big equipment and packaging systems and all the consumables. Sold a lot for the seafood industry because I could speak their language. I knew about the food. I knew I was at Cisco, so I knew their industries very well. Did really well at Georgia Pacific after they bought Unisource. And at that time, I had a friend of mine who was the vice president of a mortgage company. And he was a former professional baseball player who was a good friend of my family. And he said, listen, I think you could probably make a little bit more money in the mortgage business. And I said, well, what's that look like? And he said, well, it's an inside sales job. You're at your desk and you're talking to people and doing these things. I said, well, I really don't want to sit at my desk. That's not my style. I need to be on the road. I need to be talking to people, shaking hands, and I'm more of a relationship builder. And he said, well, why don't you give it a shot? So in any case, I looked at it, contemplated that, and margins were even better there. And at the time, I was starting a family. I was just getting married, and I decided to take the leap. And I went over into the mortgage business. I started in 2001 with Shamrock Financial, and really, really, really worked hard there, and then started a family. I had my son, who's now 18. So let's see. I was there from 01, and then I worked until we had I was with them until we had the implosion, right? The mortgage market implosion in 2008, where things just absolutely collapsed. So at that point, I had an opportunity to buy the bookstore, right? So I had worked my way through college at the bookstore, and I was really good friends with the owner at this shop. And he was looking to retire and sell. He had some health issues, and he said, look, I'm looking to sell. And my family at the time was young, right? So now I had just had my second daughter. She was 1 or 2. I realized that as the meltdown started to happen. Now, when I started my mortgage career, I was 5-6 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. It was a really long grind. And I realized I was missing out on a lot with my kids when they were little, right? Because you're working a ton. It's just the nature of the beast. You just have to be good, to be productive. And I didn't like that. I really was starting to become uncomfortable with that. When things imploded in 2008, I kind of looked at things and said, look, my kids are not going to be young forever. I value the amount of time I spend with them. I don't want them to not have a good relationship with me and me be there. I had a chance to buy the bookstore. The bookstore was an opportunity where it would allow me to coach baseball, coach basketball, be more involved, be there in the mornings, be there at nights. Oh, and by the way, it was nice for my wife because she was at the time doing all the work with the kids. And that's not fair either, right? So, so I approached the owner of the store and I said, hey, listen, I'm kind of looking for a life change here. And he said, this could work out perfectly. So I ended up, we worked out a deal. I bought the shop and jumped out of the mortgage business at that point and just worked the shop. At that point, I just really put everything into the shop, and we started doing really, really well. And he had kind of let it go a little bit as he'd had it for so long. And, I kind of rejuvenated, give it a nice shot in the arm, and kind of built that business back up and had just a ton of fun doing it. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You would think it's fun to own a bookstore, but it's really fun to own a bookstore. I mean, you see everything that's coming out in print. You talk to a lot of interesting people. But most importantly, it allowed me time to raise my kids. That was most important for me. It wasn't I kind of started to look at a bigger picture, a long-term picture, and say, listen, when this is all over, I don't want to say I wish I spent more time in my office, right? Nobody ever says, I'm glad I spent so much time in my office, and I'm glad my kids are up and gone to college now. I'm glad they got their own lives, and I never got to raise them. So it was important for me to be there and have an impact in their lives and be there for my wife. So I transitioned into the bookstore, and I still own the bookstore now. About 4 or 5 years ago, I jumped back into the mortgage business, and that was a nice transition. I had the time; the kids were a little bit older, so I was able to kind of toggle between the two. And then, so recently, I decided to get back out of the mortgage business, and I connected up with you guys not too long ago. So we got some things going with Urban Acres, and I still own the bookstore. And I'm still in real estate, so I'm flipping some homes with my brother. So my brother and I invest in some properties, and we flip those. So yeah, that kind of brings me full circle to today. And now, the transition into with you guys really started a bunch of years ago, and I want to say in probably 2014. 2015, I had come down with pneumonia, and I was really, really sick. I was working too much. Basically, I was working too many hours, had too many things going on. And I just worked myself into the point where I got sick, right? I was tired. I was working all the time. I got pneumonia. I worked with it for a year. I didn't know I had pneumonia. I went to see my primary a couple of times. I said, look, I'm really not feeling. He says, I think you got allergies, right? I had some sinus infections and different things going on. So I think you have allergies. So I went to see specialists for allergies, and they give you the prick test with all the arm, and everything pops up. Oh, you're allergic to, basically trees and, flowers and grass and the dogs and everything else. So they started to give me allergy shots. And they said, you're going to have to come in once a week for a year, and we're going to build up your immune system to all these different things. I'm going, okay, right? I mean, I was really of the mindset that, listen, when you're sick, you go to your doctor, right? So they start giving me shots. And over the course of 6 months and 8 months, I started to feel worse. And that's when I started getting the low-grade fevers, and I had the pneumonia and everything. And I'm saying, boy, this is just awful, right? So I'm actually sitting at a karate class with my son, and I'm telling a good friend of mine how lousy I've been feeling. And she says to me, I don't know if you believe in this sort of thing, but I have this holistic doctor that I go to, and she really, really straightened me out. I was feeling all lousy like you were, and all these different things. And why don't you go see? I don't know if you believe in that sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, holistic healing. I'm like, yeah, right. I didn't believe it. I was totally not on board. She says, well, you're so sick right now that it actually went from regular pneumonia to double pneumonia, and I was literally days away from being in the hospital. And she said, well, what do you got to lose? Like, the doctors haven't done anything for you so far. So what do you got to lose? And I said, you're right. So I jumped on my email. I emailed this person, and I told her all the symptoms, everything that had been going on for the past year. She said, okay, why don't you come in and see me? She said, I think I can help you. And I said, okay. So I did. So I went in to see her. I sat with her, and she gave me what she called a muscle test. And she knew I really wasn't bought into this thing yet. She said, but just humor me. Just sit here and do this muscle test, right? So she gave me this muscle test. She brought out this tray of all these different herbs and whatever else was on there. I just know it was herbs and different things. And she made me take a deep breath of it. And she had me hold my arm out straight, and she would move my arm in reaction to whatever I was smelling. And that was telling her what I was resistant to and what I wasn't resistant to, what was working and what wasn't. So we go through this test, and it takes about 15 minutes. And she put like 6 or 8 things to the side, and she sits down and she looks at me, and she says, I think you're one of the sickest people I've ever seen in my office. And I said, yeah, I'm really feeling lousy. She said, okay, hang on a second. So she breaks out this big book. Thing was about 8 inches thick, right? She thumbs through it with all these different things. She says, okay, here's what's going to happen. She said, I'm going to give you, she brought some things out of her cabinet, medicine cabinet. She puts them down on the counter. She says, I'm going to give you these. she said, and here's what I want you to take. And she prescribed, you're going to take 3 of these and 2 of these, and you're going to do this in the morning, this in the afternoon, this at night, that sort of thing. She said, here's what's going to happen. She said, in about 2 days, 3 days, she said, you're going to start to feel better. Now, at the time, I had a sinus infection I could not get rid of. I had been through 3 or 4 sets of antibiotics, by the way. And I was told by my primary, if you go through one more set of antibiotics without any reaction, we're going to put you in the hospital. That's how bad this is. Well, simultaneously, I'm seeing her, and she says, here's what's going to happen. You're going to start taking these in about 2 or 3 days. You're going to start to feel better, because what's happened is your immune system right now is shot. All the antibiotics have killed everything in your system. You're not fighting anything off. You're getting sick from everything your kids are bringing home. So here's what's going to happen. This is going to start to rebuild your immune system. And in 2 or 3 days, you're going to feel good, because your immune system's, starting to rebound a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She said, then in about a week, she said, you're going to get your low-grade fever back. You're going to get your fever back, because your immune system will be built to the point where now it's starting to fight the infection. And I said, okay. She said, I'm going to give you a 30-day supply. So then after the week, she said, you're going to want to go right back into bed. And then 2 or 3 days, you'll be out of bed and you'll start feeling better. In 30 days, come back and see me. So long story short, I go home, I start taking this stuff. And I'm not kidding, within 24 hours, it started to clear up my sinus infection. Everything started to get better. I was literally jumped out of bed the next day with some energy that I hadn't had in at least a year. And she was right. So in 2 or 3 days, I was really feeling good. A week went by, the fever came back. I felt awful. I went back into bed. I then, at 2 or 3 days after that period, I got up and I had never felt better, like ever.
Wow.
30 days go by, I go back and see her. She puts me on some maintenance stuff. And that was it. My sinus infection was gone. My pneumonia disappeared. Oh, now this was over time, right? All the stuff that she was giving me. And at that point, I was a true believer in the body wants to heal itself. You just got to give it the ability to do that.
Yep. And
I was totally blown away. It completely changed my life. And then that's why when I ran into you guys with the CBD, I was already on board. I'm like, absolutely, this absolutely works. There's no doubt about it. And I have found since then, taking the CBD, taking the Urban Acres product, that, inflammation that I've had in my, so I do a lot of triathlons and work out and that sort of thing. And it's helped so much with inflammation, joint pain, muscle pain, sleeping better, just so many different things. So yeah, when we connected, that was a no-brainer for me, for sure.
It's so funny.
And now that brings me to today.
Yeah. So you mentioned pneumonia, and a lot of people right now are kind of afraid of that, because it's in the severe cases, as most of you know, COVID. Pneumonia it strikes a lot of people. What is it like? What did it feel like to have pneumonia? And you had a very severe case of it too. What was that like?
I did. Yeah, I did. So for me, it took all of my energy. Like, I mean, you don't feel like getting out of bed. You're completely exhausted. It's not like I wasn't out of breath. Like I couldn't breathe, like, oh, give me more oxygen. It wasn't that. For me, it was, I just can't move. I have no energy to move. It's like somebody just sucked all the energy out of your body. And I was really just operating like a zombie. I mean, I had, at the time, again, I had 3 kids, I had 2 businesses running, and it was just, you had to keep going. You couldn't stop. But if I stopped for a second, I would fall asleep. If I sat down, I wouldn't be able to get back up. You're completely exhausted. You couldn't work out. There were no workouts, right? So there was no lifting, no running, no anything, because you just don't have any energy. And it's awful. I mean, it's really an awful feeling to be in when you feel like you don't have any energy for anything whatsoever. And that was the worst for me, because 1, I'm an energetic person, and 2, I need energy for the kids, energy to do things with the family. So it was pretty scary too when the doctor says, look, I can't even give you any more powerful antibiotics. This is it. Next stop, hospital. And then I ran into the holistic doctor, and she absolutely changed my life. It was amazing when I say that. And I'm careful when I say it, because I don't want other people to think that it's a magic pill. Like you go see an holistic doctor and all of a sudden your problems are all gone. It's not true. It's a process. It's a process. I happened to find the right doctor at the right time. She had over 30 years of experience. She was absolutely amazing, and she knew so much, and she knew I didn't believe too. You know, when I walked in there, she's I can see the skepticism. I get it, but just hear me out. But anyway, so pneumonia just took all my energy. I felt like a zombie. I really felt like I was a walking dead man.
Was it worse than like after you finished a triathlon?
That was a tough period in life. I'm sorry?
Was it like worse than you're feeling after you finish a triathlon?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, listen, triathlon, when you're done with a triathlon, I don't know if you've done one. I mean, but it's probably similar to your mountain climbs. But when I'm done with a triathlon, when I'm at the triathlon, I'm tired, but I'm energized. You're like, oh man, that was a rush. That was a high. You're tired and you might go hit the rack for a couple hours, but your body is still energized.
Yeah.
And I can remember after the first triathlon I had, as soon as I was done, I'm like, I can't wait to start training for another one. I was just so geeked up. Now, I will have to say this. I don't do Ironman triathlons. I'm not that cool. I'm not doing Ironmans. I'm not that cool. I do sprint triathlons, which is the mini version. So that's, still the swim, bike, run, but it's a swim that's a half mile, a bike that's 15 miles, and a run that's 5, right? So I'm done in an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. But that equates to how much training I'm going to do, right? I don't want to train for 3 hours a day. I'd rather train for anywhere between 20 minutes with a high impact workout to an hour or an hour and 10. That's it. I really don't want to have 7 days a week, 2 or 3 hours a time. I want to be able to take some days off, here and there. And those sprints are a lot of fun. So that kind of fits my niche, for my lifestyle right now.
Yeah. So going back to, you have a finance background basically is what you've been telling people for the past, you said 2001 is when you hopped in. So basically since 2001. So how long have you been seeing this economic collapse happen, and what do you think businesses should do in order to pull out? Because this is a very entrepreneurial platform, so you might be able to actually give some business owners some advice that could save their business. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, you broke up a little bit there, so I missed a little bit of that. I apologize. So did I hear you correct? It was 2008 when things imploded, and
no,
sorry,
I was just saying, how
off.
long have you seen this economic collapse coming? Like if you've been in finance since 2001, an economic collapse happened right around then, 2002, and then it was 2008, and now. So how long do you think this is?
It was 2000. Yeah, it was 2008. Yep.
So how long do you think that this one's
I'll
been
tell you
coming?
what. So it's interesting. So the market does seem to correct every so often, right? I mean, it's not. This one was totally unpredicted, right? I mean, this was just something that hit everybody by complete and total surprise. But I can say this. So the mortgage industry is still fairly strong right now. I mean, it's a lot of refinancing going on right now. Some people is still working. I think the issue right now is people that are unemployed. You can't buy obviously if you're unemployed. You can't refinance if you're unemployed. I think it takes a little bit of time to pull out of this one, but there are still people working, right? I mean, you've got all your medical professionals, all your truck drivers, anybody in the food service industry except restaurants, right? So if you're in supermarkets, if you're in supply chain, all those people are working. So I think it pulls out fairly quickly once we get back to work, right? I really do. But as far as the purchase mortgage business, there was a supply problem already, right? So there were a lot of offers on houses. There wasn't enough inventory. So you had multiple offers on houses. So you didn't have enough houses to support the demand. So now that you've pulled out some of those buyers, I mean, it's kind of gotten back to a normal sort of demand in the sense that instead of maybe getting 6 or 8 offers on a house, you might get 2 or 3 offers on a house, or maybe you get 1. But I don't see it as catastrophic. I don't. I think it's a hiccup. I think we get rolling again fairly soon. I think we need to work a few things out. I think people that own homes that are not working right now, I think the servicers they're struggling. And again, I did jump out about a month ago, so I'm not in it every day again. But I think some realtors are still very busy, and I know some mortgage professionals are still very, very busy. So I don't think it's a complete implosion, but I do think there's some corrections that need to take place. I think services are struggling right now, and whether they give forgiveness on payments. Do you give 1 month, 2 months? What do you do with that money? It doesn't disappear. Somebody has to pay somebody at some time. So I think on the back end of things, the feds really need to step in and help servicers. But I think it's really just a hiccup. I don't see this as 2008 where people are out of their homes and living in the streets. I just don't see that happening. I don't see that happening right now. I really don't.
So something that I've noticed in the news is that Elon Musk has decided to sell all of his physical properties. He's got all of these mansions, as you'd imagine Elon Musk having, and so you don't think that there's any sort of backlash, any sort of something that he can see that we can't see? But you think it's gonna rebound pretty fast, the real estate housing market?
No, I do think I don't know what Elon sold, so I can't speak. Did he sell residential or did he sell commercial? I think commercial might struggle a little bit more than residential. It's just my thought.
Yeah, well,
if he's selling commercial properties, yeah.
He's saying that he just wants to let go of physical possessions. But the conspiracy mind in me is thinking, oh, is he just forecasting the economy to completely shut down and the value of real estate to completely crash on us?
Yeah,
but that's not.
What does he know that we don't know?
Yeah, his new wife is a little bit different, so he might be playing off that.
I think Elon's kind of a different sort of person, right? I mean, he's probably, who knows, maybe he's selling it all because he's preparing to take his first trip to Mars. Who knows, right? But I don't think he's selling. I don't think he's selling it because he sees a big implosion. And not to mention, if you hang on to that property, it doesn't matter what it does between now and let's say 10 years from now, right? So if I own, I own my house, right? So my house could go from being worth, $400,000 to being worth $50,000 3 months from now. But if I keep paying the mortgage, I'm fine because eventually it comes back. Real estate always has come back, right? It always has come back. It's just a matter of how long does it take to come back, right? So from the 2008 crash, it took a while for those values to come back around. The problem we had in 2008 was that there was way more supply than demand, right? So what happened was everybody got credit, everybody bought houses. And then when those people needed to sell because they got in trouble, there wasn't anybody that was there to buy them. Right now, we've got a big boom in demand, meaning we got a lot of people that are in that first time home buyer age where you're 25, 26 to 35, 37, 36, 37. You got a big age group in there. So they're doing it. And guess what? That age group knows how to make money different ways too. So they can afford those houses sometimes. I don't think that the real estate will come back. So I don't think he's selling it because he's afraid of it dropping, because anybody that knows anything knows it's going to come back eventually. It's just a matter of when.
It's surprising how much money.
So I don't think he's selling it, and I think that's a sign that people should say, "Oh, the whole thing's going to tank."
Yeah, it's honestly surprising how much money they're giving back to people to put back into the economy. It's almost like, they want it to have a better chance of surviving, and it's kind of way different than 2008, where all they did was bail out the banks and and didn't help the people at all, and the people basically paid for the banks to be bailed out. It's kind of like the opposite now of that.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah. It's I don't know all the economics between making sure people have enough money to continue to pump things into the economy, but I know that you need to keep people with enough money to keep the economy going, right? So again, this was just totally blindsided. Well, depending on whether you believe, what's out there, whether this was planned and whatnot, the pandemic and all that stuff that's on YouTube right now, whether it's planned or not. I mean, it blindsided pretty much everybody. So I think there's a lot of stopgap approaches like, okay, how do we do this, right? What do we do? How do we do? We've never seen this sort of thing before. So the government's shelling out money to a lot of people to keep things going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're
Whose radio is that?
not mine.
Is that me?
Yep.
Mine.
I don't think so. Is it?
Yeah, it's not coming from here.
Probably one of the kids.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I
think I'll shut
heard
somebody off here.
I heard that I just lost my train of thought. So there was I don't know if it was a news article or something, but they were mentioning. Yeah, it's the music.
Sorry,
It's
guys.
okay.
Oh,
That's what happens when you have
all
kids. They leave the stuff around and it starts up.
That's all right.
It was
It's
a good song, right?
It's like those Furbies back in the day that just turn on in the middle of the night. What I was saying though, I heard some.
So anyway, I'm sorry. So where were you at?
I heard some economists say something along the lines of what happened maybe in the Great Depression was that they pumped a bunch of money and everything, and everybody had money, but there was a food crisis, and everyone had all this money, but nothing to buy. Like you couldn't buy food because there was none. So that's what people are kind of like, hey, I hope this really doesn't happen. But now with the collapse of three of the biggest meat processors in the United States, it's getting kind of eerie.
People are going
feeling, isn't it?
vegetarian.
Yeah, there's plenty of grow gardens.
I'll tell you, when you threaten a person's food supply, that's a big threat, right? You can lose your house, you can lose your car, but when you lose food supply, I mean, that threatens your very existence. So people get very, very scared. And I think that's a legitimate concern, right? Because we did see those big meat processors close, right? And they close whether they close for safety or they close for other reasons. And, we could go into the fact that China owns one of those big, large meat packaging plants out in the Midwest, and they've closed it, and they own hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland in this country too. I don't know if you know that. So they literally could choke us off very quickly if certain things, I guess, fall into place. So I don't know what those things would be, but I think that's very scary that, you're talking about rationing now, food rationing, right? So if you go to the supermarket and they tell you can only buy one steak today, that's a really big red flag.
Yeah.
So I think what happens there is, and it's just my thought, is that I think, and we were talking about this before we went live, so I think what happens is you start to see a demand for more regional manufacturing, more regional processing than national. So if those national packers are closed, well, guess what? The food demand does not stop because they're closed. That has to go somewhere. People have to eat. So what's going to happen is hopefully you see more regional stuff happen. So you'll see somebody in Fall River, in Taunton, in New Bedford step up to the plate and say, I've got a food processing, and I'm going to start to process this stuff locally, right? So I know some farmers that send their stuff out to be processed, and if they could process it locally, they would. So I think I'd like to see some of that stuff come back regional, right? So now you've got closer to the tables, from farm to table, you've got closer processing. I think that's an entrepreneur's opportunity right there, that to open up a new processing facility. And I think it would take some time, but it would make sense, right? Something that's grown here, right? So now, not only do you have, if you start to get regional processing, well, then you don't need to have all the beef out in the Midwest. You can still have farmers here locally who want to get back into cow farming, who want to get into pig farming, who want to do those things, that can have this stuff processed locally. You don't have to ship it halfway across the country, because a lot of times that's at the farmer's expense, right? So if they can take it from Rehoboth, they can take it from Taunton, and they can bring it to Fall River and New Bedford. That's a better ecosystem. And by the way, you're getting it to your plate a lot sooner, right? Same thing with, whatever vegetables have to be processed, however they do that and package it, right? If you have that stuff locally available, I think you just have a better ecosystem. So now you got local people working at the packers, working at the processors, and that's providing jobs, it's providing income, a more stable economy. And the more diversity you have inside your community, the more likely you are to last through recessions. Right. So, for example, Vermont has a really, really good economy in the sense that they have a lot of that stuff local. Right? They have a lot of farmers, they have a lot of processors, they have a lot of a lot of meat farmers and whoever else, and they process it locally, right? And they keep it local. And if you notice, you ever go to Vermont, they have a very strong buy local movement, right? And of course, they have a lot of land too, right? But they have a lot of grass-fed beef, free-range chickens, all those sorts of things that people really like. And if you can bring the cost of those items down, then I think that makes a healthier population. So I think it's an opportunity that these meat packers are closed. It's not good for us in the short term. But I think long term, some entrepreneurs are going to step up and they're going to open some regional stuff. You're going to start to see these farmers maybe do something with their land again, right? How many farmers do we know that we run into that have had to run into financial hard times? They've had to put their land in APR to protect it so they don't sell it off. And now if you can keep that as agricultural land, well, guess what? Now you can start using that again.
Uh-oh.
Right? If they're just like,
We're losing Eric, it looks like a little bit here.
It just get freezing up, getting a little choppy. Eric, are you still with us? Can you hear us?
Can't hear you. Refresh your screen. See what that hit refresh on your browser.
And you know what, Eric? Try backing out of the live stream and then rejoining the link.
Oh yeah, sometimes
hang on.
Oh, whoa.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear
Okay.
me? Can you hear me now?
We're good. Yes.
Am
You're
I back?
back.
All right. So yeah, sorry about that. So what I was saying is, I think you can start to get farmers that have had to protect their land from development. You start to use that land again, right? I mean, that's just kind of what I'm thinking on this overall scheme of what.
Do you think that's
here,
sustainable
right?
with
so if our food
states?
supply is threatened nationally, well, then what do? You got to reel back into regional locations, right? And I know here in New England, we've got plenty of farmers that can produce a good amount of product for us.
Do you think that's sustainable in states with big cities such as like Boston, New York, Atlanta, Chicago? Like there's a lot of people in those parts of in those big cities. And do you think that there's enough farmers around them to supply enough for those big cities?
Sorry, Adam, I'm having trouble hearing you, brother.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
Can you? Yeah, I can hear you fine, Adam. Can you hear me, Eric?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Andrew. I lost you, Adam. Sorry, man.
Adam was saying, do you think it's sustainable for like states and counties to be able to supply big cities like New York and Boston and to have that all local?
No, well, maybe. I mean, I guess it's been so long since we've done that. I think it would take a while to do it. I think, yeah, population is really a problem. But I think if, instead of having 3 local manufacturers, why can't we have 20, 30, 40? Why can't we do that, right? Why can't we start to utilize that? Why can't we have some of the land that you see, that's open used for animal farming, chickens, turkeys, beef, pigs. Look, people can start going back to, and I think you mentioned this a while ago, Adam, people can start going back to growing gardens in their backyard, right? So, I mean, people start utilizing the land that they have and start relying on everybody else to supply it for them and get creative. I think you can do that. I mean, in cities, you see certain areas that aren't really used, and people are, using that for local gardens and things. Not that that's going to supply an enormous amount of food for everybody, but I think if you do that, everybody does that on a smaller scale, I think you do start to see an impact. And what's your choice? If you can't get it nationally, what are you going to do? You got to get it locally,
And
Yep.
even if it takes a chunk out, so if we start with having 30% be supplied locally, and that's 30% of the market, and maybe that can grow, or either
Yeah,
or.
that's right.
It's something. It would
Yeah.
create more jobs.
I think people
Having everything close by,
It is.
it sounds like a no-brainer, really.
would have a big wake
Right.
up call.
Well, even regionally, if you think about it, right? So I just not too long took it down to Georgia. So supply. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of land in some of these spots. Some of those areas, there's a ton of land down there. So even if we can't do it here in New England, what's the problem with doing it in Virginia? Virginia's not that far away. You can process in Virginia. You can process in the Carolinas. That's Eastern, right? That's Eastern, right? Why does it have to be in Kentucky? Doesn't have to be in Kentucky. Kentucky's a lot further away than Virginia, right? Some of those big processing plants out in the Midwest, that's a long way away, right? You can have it right here on the East Coast and just truck it up and down the East Coast. East Coast can supply the East Coast. The Midwest
It's
can
at
supply
least
the Midwest.
closer.
West Coast can supply the West. So we don't just we don't have to just have it here in New England, which we could. Maybe it's not feasible. Maybe you have to have some of it. Maybe they do. I mean, I know they have a ton of land down in that area, but that's still what I would consider regional, right? Eastern time frame, right? So the Eastern Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast. So think about it. It takes less than a day to get to Virginia, right? It might take you 2 days to get to Minnesota or wherever the stuff is processed out in the Midwest, 2 or 3 days, whatever it is. So I just think that's opportunity is all I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
And the more you can spread this thing out, think about how vulnerable we are when 3 companies are processing 80% of what America consumes for meat products. That's pretty scary. So we need to
And
kind of
one of
dilute
them is owned by
the
China.
pool a little bit here.
Yeah.
And we need to start coming up with some other folks that can process this stuff, right? Then we're less vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a big wake up call for people, anyways. Like, honestly, I think people overeat meat. I do think they do. And it's kind of a big wake up call for that. Like, there really isn't. Maybe it's time to cut back just a little bit for some people, but because it's not good for the planet either. Not even just.
Listen, you make a great point. You make an awesome point. We consume in this country like crazy, right? We consume a ton. One of the issues, I don't know if you know this, but this is an interesting fact, and we may have talked about this before. 50 years ago, the average American spent 20% of their income on food. And roughly, and these are rough numbers, right? So 20% of their income on food and 10% of their income on over-the-counter drugs. Now it's the opposite. We spend, on average, we're going to spend 20% on over-the-counter drugs and all these pharmaceuticals and different things to make ourselves feel better and whatever, and supplements and all these different things that we're doing. And we spend less on food, right? So if we consume less high-quality food, you're going to start to feel better, right? So you talk about organics, right? When you talk about organic foods, it's more expensive because it's more expensive to grow and all those things. But we don't need to supersize everything, right? We really don't. Think about it. Everything is supersized. You want a large with that? No, I don't want a large. You go somewhere and you get a soda. It's giant. I don't need a giant soda. I want a small soda. You can't get a small soda. So you're right. I mean, it might cut back on consumption. So if you spend a little bit more on your food again, then okay, maybe you consume a little bit less of it, right? So, I mean, that's a really good point. I think consumption, there is an overconsumption. You don't need a giant porterhouse steak in one sitting, right? You just don't need it. Your body can survive on a lot of stuff. So I think some of that can happen. I think some of that can happen. And if you think about, our grandparents and stuff that went through the Depression and those things, they didn't consume like that. They just didn't consume like that. So we can do it again, right? We can do it again.
Sorry to interrupt, but I completely agree with what you're saying.
Back to the point when people's food chain gets threatened, it's scary for people. We haven't seen that in this country in a while.
Isaac's hopping in. If you don't know, Isaac is our Jamie. If you ever watch Joe Rogan podcast, he has a gentleman named Jamie running and everything in the back. Isaac is like Jamie, just way more handsome and personable.
Thank you. I completely agree with what you're saying. I feel like ever since I've noticed over the past 5 years, people have become a lot more comfortable with like the amount that our economy is in, and they just take advantage of that, and then it leads to overconsumption of a lot of things like food, entertainment, just a whole bunch of stuff, because people just get comfortable and dive into these revenues.
Yeah.
And I think right now what we're seeing with the coronavirus is a huge wake-up call. I mean, is COVID really attacking the most? It's the unhealthy people, the people that supersize everything. It's the people that have overindulged and unfortunately have diabetes and heart disease and are obese. This is what disease does, is it attacks people that are physically
susceptible.
Weaker.
Susceptible is a good word.
That's exactly right. So I'm looking at this as, not that I eat super unhealthy, but I'm kind of looking at this like a wake-up call. Start eating right. Take care of yourself, exercise, start swimming, whatever it is.
Drink more beer.
Get healthy.
Yeah, I've been drinking like 4 of these like big water things every single day.
Good, staying hydrated.
I've been drinking a lot of tea.
Important.
I started taking a lot of supplements and vitamins.
Yeah.
Yogurt.
Speaking of, my beer baby actually needs a watering today. So I've been doing a daily show. Andrew's already laughing. I've been doing a daily show, the What Did Adam Say show, live on Facebook and Twitch and YouTube. And on that show, I've talked about my beer baby. Now, this little seedling here, I've grown it with nothing but beer, and she's a little dry. Now, this is the beer baby.
Her growth is
a little bit. This is the water. this is the beer. It's a little. It's like it's like you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. So, but she needs a little bit of water. And so,
this is Idiocracy to a T. That movie where they feed the plants with Gatorade.
Somebody commented on my live stream the other day and said it's going to be the only violent strain in the world. It's all fizzing at the top and everything.
Oh yeah,
that's too funny. So, hey, you know what? What's funny? So we talked about fishing and things that are in the river and whatnot. So years ago we used to be able to take heron, right? So we talked about heron, right? So
I think gather up heron
as live bait to fish. Well, we used to keep that. We used to scoop them up. Yeah, it was before the show, right? So, the heron Taunton River. Anyway, so I used to net those, and I used to put them in a 50-gallon drum with pumps in it, and I used to take them from where we used to catch them, and the drum would be in the back of my truck, right? We'd run them in 5-gallon buckets up to the truck, throw them in the back of the truck, and then I'd bring them down to the water, and you live line them, right? Throw them on a hook, and you live line them, and you catch big striped bass with them. Well, we would always fill the 50-gallon drum with fresh water because, again, that's a fish that goes from salt water into fresh water to spawn, and then it drops back into salt water, so it can live in fresh water. So we'd fill the gallon, the barrel up with hose water. Well, guess what? When those herring were all done, when you're done fishing with it, a barrel filled with this oily, foamy sort of substance. It was water, basically, all the fish oil in it. And I used to put that on my garden, and I would have the most, I would have a garden that absolutely boomed. And in fact, my cousin's a really big farmer. He's got a green thumb like you do. And he actually won the Marshfield Fair with 5 gold ribbons or blue ribbons or whatever the top prize is for vegetables. You know, in Marshfield Fair, right? I don't know if you guys know that, but Marshfield Fair, they have prizes and stuff like that. He actually won 5 different categories with stuff he had grown from the heron oil that he had used in his garden when he started out.
That's amazing. I'm a huge proponent of using fish. Adam and I use biofish for our plants. It's one of the best fertilizers I've found for food. I mean, I was actually thinking I might actually start heron fishing just so that I can supply my garden.
Yeah, we also use
heron
fish
would be
shit.
a good option for it, right?
You can't take heron.
Oh, you can't.
Well, what we'll do is we'll take the Manhattan because you can't possess a heron anymore because they got a moratorium.
I did not know.
So you can't even have a frozen one. Even if you caught 10 years ago and kept it in your freezer, you can't have it. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll do that with Manhattan, right? So when the Manhattan schools come in and I start to scoop those guys up, we'll use that water.
Yeah. We it's funny actually how much fish products we use because there's a product called fish shit that we use. They're actually local here in Rehoboth, I believe, right?
Really?
Yeah, they're a local. We actually had them on the podcast like I don't know 6 months ago. Well, fuck, more than that at this point. It's like 10 months ago. Yeah, they're a huge, pretty big company actually. They do all the big conventions across the whole entire U.S. and they're in a lot of grow stores and everything like that. We love their products for sure. So between biofish and fish shit and then advanced nutrients, we use their.
And they're from Rehoboth?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
We have so many talented people locally. It's insanity, honestly. We have like so many talented entrepreneurs in Massachusetts.
I'm a big proponent. I'm such a proponent of local. Everything I possibly can do local, I will do local. There's just no doubt about it. And you know, you might spend a couple extra bucks, but I'm totally fine with that because I'm supporting my neighbors' businesses. I'm supporting my neighbors working. I'm supporting the local economy. And, you know, we've talked about that before. Listen, you spend money at a national retailer, for example, only 30 cents of that money, out of 30 cents out of every dollar stays in the community, right? As opposed to when you spend that at a local retailer, 70 cents out of every dollar stays in the community. Right, because we go out to eat, we spend money with our other restaurants, we hire local people, we pay our local taxes, we do all those things. The big corporations, they just don't, right? I mean, that big corporate headquarters are in another state, and while most of those people are working there local, the wages are generally less at your national retailers as opposed to your local businesses. Diversity, think about the diversity we talked about earlier, right? Vermont. When we saw the dip back in 2008 and the national dip was, let's say, 20%, they saw a single-digit dip in their economy. You know why? Because they had a better buy local movement. That's really what it boils down to. So as long as you can buy local, I'm absolutely a total proponent of all that.
That's literally been our whole shtick. You know, being at the kiosks and everything. That's been the whole thing that separated us from our competitors at the mall is just being local. Like our display doesn't look as good as our competitors. We don't have as broad of a product line quite yet as our competitors, but we are locally grown, and you could literally see pictures of the plants that are in the products that you're taking right now. So there's not many companies that are able to do that where you can go to the homepage of a website and scroll down and see a plant there, and that plant is being used within our products currently. You know, it's a cool thing, and it's something I'm really proud of. And
you know what? There's a health aspect to that too.
It's fresher.
Yeah, there's a health aspect to that too, right? You hear about eating local honey, right? Because it's local pollens and local things, you know, that you should be eating as opposed to something in another region, right? Same thing with our product, right? Same thing with that product, but you got to be local, right? It's got local stuff in it. That's where you are. That's in your region. So there's a health aspect to that too, right? And if you can get it quicker from where you harvested it to in your body to consumption, generally that's better.
Yeah, because some of this gas station CBD stuff is like, it's like floor product after. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's just garbage that sat there and it's been sitting for 4 years. That's some shit somebody was going to throw away, and they were like, I guess we'll call this CBD oil and put it in a gas station. But eventually somebody has to come along and change the gas station model,
Right.
and that's definitely something we've been working hard on trying to do. So eventually the gas station CBD stigma will go away, because hopefully us and a bunch of other good local companies can help fill that void, because there's no excuse, honestly.
Exactly.
We should all
Yep.
be able to produce products that have a gas station model pricing, and that's exactly why we released the chapstick, exactly why we have the bath bombs, exactly why we have the roll-ons, because all these items, even the pet CBD and our lower grade, the 250 milligram salve and oil, like all these things are $25 and under, because when you're going to a gas station, you're not trying to spend more than that. Even 25 is pushing it. So you want to
Right.
have things that are 10,
Yep.
15, 20, $25 at the gas station that are able to
Yep.
just move quick as like an add-on item. And we have to be able to
Yep.
fill that
And
void to replace the shitty CBD.
I think the
yeah,
biggest
absolutely. And, the
reason.
thing is, you're not going to the gas station necessarily to buy that. I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, you're not really generally going to the gas station to buy that product. You buy it because you're in there already and you say, oh, that's right, I need some more of that. I'm almost out, or I grab it, or you've heard it so much time over and over and over. You go, all right, I'm going to try this, right? And then you try it and you're like, that didn't work, right? Now you're soured to the fact that you're like, oh, that didn't work. I tried it and it wasn't any good, right? So now it gives everything a bad name, because, CBD is thrown out there so much. And, it's not the consumer's fault that they don't understand it like, you guys understand it, like we understand it, or somebody else in the business understands it. They don't understand that because they're just the consumer, right? And they just hear about it and you see it on the news, and those reports don't go into enough depth on why it matters to know what you're consuming, right? So yeah, you're right. If we can crack that code, then we're providing a good service to consumers.
What were you gonna say, Andrew?
Yeah, I apologize for stepping on the conversation a little bit. It's there's a little bit of lag. I think I'm on the on my Wi-Fi, so that might be doing it. But I was just going to say, I think the whole reason why gas stations end up getting the CBD that they got is because the conglomerates, with all the money and all the manpower and all the sales force, they said, hey, you know what?
Yes.
We've got all this money. Sales team, reach
That's what
out
it
to
is.
all of these people, and they got there first.
Mhm.
So now it's just a matter. It's our job to rebalance that curve
Yep.
and get in there and say, hey, you know what?
Yeah,
This is
that's absolutely right.
this is what we're looking at here, and this is what we've found.
Yeah, and it's up to us to educate too. That's been one of the hardest parts about having the kiosk shut down and just being online, is just being able to educate. When you're at the kiosk, it's a very personal experience. It's a one-on-one experience. You're telling me what you have ailments, and I'm telling you what we have that could possibly help relieve some of those ailments, maybe. And it's a whole different conversation than we could have with people online, even emailing. Most of the conversations online are just like, how should I take this? Like, it's not telling us what they have, what they're trying to take it for, or anything really. When somebody emails me and says, hey, how should I take this, I have to like search their name, figure out what product they have, and then be like, okay, let me remember what I did at the kiosk, try to say that
Right.
towards an email and everything. And it's just
Yeah.
not the same experience. I can't wait for the mall experience to really be back, and I can't wait to be in some more gas stations and everything like that too, because I think that gas stations could probably sell even more CBD if they advertised local CBD. And it's because, again, like you said, when it comes to local, people want to support. People have I've literally seen people at the kiosk do this, right? We'll say, hey, would you like to try a sample of our CBD? And they'll say, no, thanks. And I'll hear them mumble to their friends, like, oh, I've seen that like every fucking gas station, and I just want to be like, it's not gas station CBD. Like, it's not the same. Sometimes I do, and I've been able to turn some
Right.
people around that way. But people have this like
Sure.
negative stigma towards CBD right now
Yeah.
because they've seen it in terrible places, like some big thing.
And they don't know.
Exactly. Or they've tried it
Right.
and it
And they
didn't
don't
work.
know. And yeah, that's right. And they're just like, oh, you're right. They tried it. They're thinking it's like an inoculation, right? I got an inoculation shot and now my stuff should be all gone,
Mhm.
right? It isn't. Sometimes it's a process. And sometimes Maybe you need something more powerful, less powerful. Maybe you need the salve instead of the oil, whatever. But it's a process too. And as a consumer, you really have to keep trying that stuff. But the thing is, you want them to understand the difference because you care about the product you're selling and you care about the people you're selling it to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what the difference is. You're right. The conglomerates, they get this product from whomever has it because they're already supplying a dozen different products to the gas station. And this is just one more ancillary item to throw into the order to help the gas station because they have minimum orders that they got to meet. You got to spend $5 with each one of these vendors, or they don't ship the order, or whatever it is. So they throw an add-on on there. And then the consumers get it, and they don't know any different, right? Because now, I mean, think about it. I'm a consumer of how many different things, and how many different things do I not know enough about that I might try to consume, or something I've tried and I've said, that didn't really work for me, right? It might be some other product that if you run into a local manufacturer of that product, they're going to educate you on a whole different, set of criteria on that product. They're going to say, hey, listen, the reason it didn't work was because of this, right? Because it didn't have enough of this in it, or it didn't have enough of that in it, or it had too much of something else in it. It wasn't manufactured correctly. I didn't know until I started getting into the holistic game, when that doctor told me why over-the-counter stuff doesn't work, that it's mass-produced in some of these labs, because they synthesize this stuff and your body doesn't recognize what it is, so it just sends it out as waste. So you might be taking that, that over-the-counter, even a vitamin C, right? You may be taking that over-the-counter vitamin C, but if it's not from natural sources and naturally created, so your body recognizes it as vitamin C to utilize it, guess what? It's not using it. It's taking it, and out it goes. And it doesn't get applied to your body where it needs to be, right? People don't know that, right? So you're buying, you go into the pharmaceuticals and the corner store, the pharmacy, and you cross-eyed just by looking at all the items in there. Well, you realize is 98% of them are not working. They're going to get flushed through your system because they were made incorrectly, and they're made so you need vitamin C, right? Yeah, you do. So you grab some, but you don't know it's not working. It's actually not being absorbed into your body correctly.
Mm-hmm.
There is some good news though, and
so that'd be nice if we can crack that code and educate people.
The good news that I saw just before actually we met up and talked and came online, and this is in reference to our kiosks. So in Atlanta, they're about a week, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ahead of us. So they're actually starting to open up, and there's a couple of malls in Atlanta that are open. And I was fearful that even when malls did open, that people would be scared to go. And if Atlanta is anything like what we're going to see here, then we're in good shape, because there were quite a few cars in the parking lots in that Atlanta mall. So hopefully May 18th rolls around and we might just be back where we started.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get that personal connection again with our customers.
Well,
I don't think so, but I hope so.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Let's.
I really hope so,
Yeah,
but
I think
I'm looking at it now.
I think you're going to see some caution.
Yes. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think people are going to be cautious at first, but at the same time, listen, we've been cooped up for a long time. I'm somebody that's going to get right back out there. I am absolutely going to get right back out there. In fact, I've been out there now. I mean, I've been out doing things. I still go to I'm not hiding away. I'm not hiding away. So I'm one that will do that, right? And I know a number of people that are going to do that, right? I know people that are ready to come back into the bookstore, and people are coming in saying, hey, can I look around for a little bit? Can I do these different things? So some people are ready to go. So I think you'll see a nice influx of people, like taking a deep breath, like, oh, this is great. We're getting back out there.
It's going to be one of two people. It's going to be the people that are just like, I can't wait to get back out there in the public, and the people that are like, I'll wait a month or so. It's nothing. It's one or the other. And I've actually, been in touch with a few of our employees that are like, I don't really want to go out right away. Like, so what if we open on May 18th? I don't really want to be there yet. I'm too scared. And I'm like, luckily the malls are going to be doing like shortened hours and probably like, you know, sidewalk deliveries and stuff like that. But you know, we'll be able to work it out. But like I said, there's going to be two types of people, and I can't wait to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Isaac.
To reiterate on what you're saying, my sister's actually one of those people because I actually just got a niece about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, and her birthday's on June 30th. And she's like, we're not going to get to see her. And like my mom was talking to her, and she's like, I can't wait to like give Aurora a hug. And my sister said, what, in like a year? And I was just like, huh?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Like I'm good. I would give anybody a hug right now. I don't care.
Yeah, same.
But I'm an anomaly, you know, like for other people I would want to keep them safe, but I have a very, 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 very strong immune system. I'm pretty sure I've already had this as well. Like I get sick once every like 3 years or so, and it's usually for like 1 or 2 days and I'm good. But I got sick at the end of December, beginning of January for like a good 2 weeks hard.
Yo, same.
And then like a week after that, and then it was trailing like for a couple weeks after that even. So to the point where like I wasn't even going to the kiosk. I was texting our employees like, I'm so sorry. I can't even move right now. Like I'm stuck on the couch. And I remember one point I was sitting on the couch, and I'm very much stubborn. So I wasn't saying anything to my fiance or my family. Or anybody really. I was just like sitting on the couch, and I couldn't even breathe. I was just like, and I remember I just went outside to like shock my body because it was January, so it was cold. And when I got outside, my body was like shivering, and I went like I was able to breathe, and I started just like bawling my eyes out because I could not breathe. And I don't get sick like that at all. So, you know, I really feel like this thing has been around a little bit longer than they're really putting on. And if you really accounted for that into the amount of people that have had it and recovered from it, I think that the death rates would be a little bit lower. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm not an expert or a scientist or a doctor, but, you know, I have my thoughts.
Yeah, I personally can't wait to get back out there and start actually doing things. The only concern that I have is that if I happen to be asymptomatic, I don't want to give it to anybody. Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't want to be the reason that a whole family gets sick. You know, so that's why I'm going to be wearing a mask, and I'll probably be wearing a mask for a while. I can't remember if I said this on a live cast or if this is just a conversation that we've had, because I've been telling quite a few people this, but if you haven't heard it, there was a round table discussion of a few of the United States' smartest epidemiologists and virologists. And the main question that they sat down to answer was, what's going to happen with this virus? Looking at all of the diseases of the past and what we know about this current situation, what's going to happen? And they came up with 3 scenarios, and they were all pretty bleak. The first scenario was that every 2 months, every 2.5 to 3 months, we would see a spike in cases and deaths equivalent to the one that we're just seeing now. And this is in perpetuity for as long as the eye can see until there's a vaccine. The second potential outcome was that in October, we would see a spike in cases and deaths that are twice as catastrophic as this one. And that would be bad because it would completely cripple the healthcare system. And then if that happens, I mean, if you get sick, really sick, you're pretty much on your own. There is no hospital to help you. And again, this one's a little bit different because this spikes the herd immunity. So once this happens, the cases actually start to dwindle and die off, just like what happened in 1918, because most people end up getting it. And then the final scenario was that every month to every month and a half, we'll see a spike that's about 1/2 to 3/4 as intense as the one that we just saw. And again, with like the first one, this is until there's a vaccine. So this could be 1 year, like Isaac was saying, his sister was saying 2, 3. I mean, this particular graph showed until 2022, but I mean, who knows? I mean, and those might all be wrong.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, this is something that a lot of the experts, I'm no expert, the experts are saying that this is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I've heard experts say the opposite too.
Yeah,
It's just like funny
it's not
how
going
like
away.
whatever you look for, you'll find. Like, and I feel like there's so much conflicting data that I don't know what the hell to believe with this whole thing. You know, like it just none of it makes sense to me. And looking at numbers wise, it blows my mind what's happening right now. That's all I can say. I don't want to I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be Eddie Bravo on this podcast or anything. But like,
Yeah, what I do believe is that I'm not going to live my life in fear.
no.
I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm going to be cautious when I need to be cautious, but I'm not going to live in fear.
I can't
I'm not going to
stand
lock
wearing a
myself in the house.
mask,
I'm
like-
not going to lock myself away. The world. No, I'm going to work. I'm going to go out. I'm still going to meet people, still talk to people. I'm still fishing. I'm still going to the beach. I'm still going to go to baseball games. I'm not going to live in fear. You know, I'm just not. That's just the way it's going. I'm not going to be careless, but I'm also not gonna shell myself up in my house. I'm just not. Just my opinion. You know, I think sheltering and doing all this is sometimes a little bit overkill in some fashion.
Yeah, and it seems like I don't know. There's a lot going on. We talked about a lot of different stuff the other day, and I'm being very very choosy with what I say on here, but it's very interesting what's going on right now. You know, nonetheless.
It's just a whole bunch of ways to separate people and make everyone more distant from each other. Because the way that we're in right now is everyone is very strong about how they feel, and they're like it's such an extreme case that when you challenge someone's ideology of the circumstance, then it's like they attack you because they feel so strongly and so passionate because it's such a serious situation that we've been placed
like
in.
people are taking it and treating it like politics.
Yes. Yeah, like today
people get that way with politics.
I was at work and some guy in the break room and went over to Subway, and a guy sat down in the Subway, and the store manager was like, "You can't sit down, like you have to leave." And he said, "Okay," so he stood up for a second and then sat back down. And the store manager went over and like put him in a headlock, and they started fist fighting.
This is at your work?
No, this is at the Subway near my work.
Whoa. A headlock,
and like they
that's
called
not
the
social
police
distancing.
And everything. It's just like the other week I went into the Hannaford's, and
yeah,
I had a mask on. I'm not like being careless. I walked in front of someone, in front of them, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, and I just walked away from him. It's like, how miserable do you have to be in your life to like accept this and have this negative energy cultivate inside of you and like become your so apparent reality? Yeah. It's killing you on the inside before it'll kill you on the outside. And that's the sick, twisted aspect of the fear tactic.
Yeah.
If this thing goes like as long as like let's just say by the end of 2020, it's gonna kill probably like 20% more than the flu typically kills. Looking at
because of the stress.
Statistically. But I wonder how many people haven't died because of car accidents now. I know it's typically like 3,500 people in America alone that die from car accidents every month. So I wonder how many people haven't done that. But I also wonder how many people have committed suicide now, because it's been hard on me. You know, like I've been depressed during this shutdown, and I have a family and a lot to live for, and like I would never ever think about doing that. So but somebody that's on edge already and gets into this type of situation and has nothing to live for, like I can only imagine the amount of suicides that it's increasing unfortunately, and domestic violence and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
my mom was talking to me because she doesn't come from the best upbringing, but she's like all the abused kids are stuck at home with their abusers.
Yep.
There's like a lot of wavelengths that like we can't even comprehend, or like the majority of the public doesn't think of, that radiate to like every single different root of the economy. And that's why this is such a bad thing, because it's not the aspects that we're being told about that is having the hugest impact, like the separation of people, and like you said, the increased rate of depression and anxiety. And the more fearful people are, the more they're willing to accept any answer that they're given. We're being like dummied.
That's what it feels like to me, in my humble opinion. Not to go completely south or anything. But it's just this is what I mean though, like by there's so much conflicting reality behind this, and there's so much differing reality behind this, and I think people treating it like politics is just the wrong way to go about it. Everybody has different realities with this thing, and immune compromised people are always immune compromised, unfortunately, and we can't shut down over every disease. Although this one does look like it's pretty bad. It's 20% worse than the flu, looking like death wise. That's pretty bad, because the flu kills almost 1 million people a year, and that's already pretty bad. So,
New studies are popping up about the disease itself, and it is not to be spoken light of. I mean, the fascinating thing about this disease that makes it so unique, with this virus, is that it replicates signs and symptoms of a slew of different diseases. So it targets the ACE2 receptor, and the ACE2 receptor are little proteins that are on a bunch of different cells in the human body, from the lung to the nose, the olfactory cells, your GI tract, and that's why you can see it. The disease present itself in so many different ways. Some people, it represents it. It looks like they have the common cold. Sometimes it affects the lungs, and it looks like they have pneumonia, and it replicates. Looks like the flu. Sometimes it attacks the GI tract, and you get diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, things like that. And what we're finding too now is it in children, young kids. It's resembling what's called Kawasaki disease. So it's like this virus is mutating constantly, and who knows where it'll be in a month, if it'll still be here, or a year. And who knows the seriousness? It could get worse. It could get not as severe. Something that always kind of pops up in my mind is the virus that we're seeing now the same virus that's plaguing Mexico, that's plaguing Argentina or Brazil, or Rio? Rio's getting hit pretty hard. And when the seasons change, are these different variant species going to migrate with the season? And now that the strain that New England got, are they going to be immune to the strain in South America? I don't know. I don't think anybody does. And this is just so thought-provoking, and you can't let yourself get crippled. And Eric, you made a really good point. You're not gonna live in fear, but you're also gonna respect it, and you're gonna not be careless. And that's the most important thing. And if people take care of themselves,
Yeah,
you
eat
can't
healthy,
really
focus on
do
your
much more.
immunity.
Yep.
Like make sure you build up your immunity during this.
Eat
Really
yoga.
matters. It really matters. Overall body health, right? It's not just doing one thing. It's doing a lot of things. It's holistic health, right? You got to keep yourself healthy in all different aspects. Even if it's just, I mean, people talk about exercise, right? Even if you just walk, get up and walk, get your body moving, right? I mean, it's not just matter. You don't have to be a triathlete to be healthy. You don't. You can get out and walk. Go for a walk once in a while. Take your dog for a walk. Go for a walk with your kids, your friends, by yourself. Do some active stuff. You don't have to jog and run and lift weights and do all that to be healthy. You can be healthy with, I know some of my neighbors, they walk for an hour a day, and they're happy and healthy and different things. So, I mean, it's get active, stay active, do different things. Don't live in fear. Listen, this thing is not going away. It's never going to be gone from the earth. All the cases are not going to be gone. All the lights are not going to be green. We're going to learn as we go. We're going to progress like we always have, like our culture does. It's just who we are. And it's not just the United States. It's all across the board. The human race is very resilient. We're generally pretty persevering, and we're pretty creative when it matters, right? So I think we're going to pull out of it. We're going to pull out of it a little bit differently. But we have to understand that some people are afraid, and some people have a legitimate reason to be afraid, and they have to be extra cautious. And you got to respect those people that need to be extra cautious. And I think what's scary right now is this is doing more damage to healthy people than it is to unhealthy people, because you're talking about lives. There are a lot of people that have families to feed, that families to provide for, and we're still being locked up. We're still being quarantined. We're still being held back from doing those things. We have enough data and enough information now to be able to protect those that feel like they're vulnerable and know that they're vulnerable, so they should be quarantined. They should be put aside. Those things, we know those things now. There's enough data out there. We cannot continue to hold everybody in homes. Some people are afraid. My mother the other day was accosted by a woman screaming at her. Now, my mother is 75 years old. She was not wearing a mask when she went to the supermarket. And there was a woman who felt like she was threatening everybody else. Now, not everybody else had a mask on, right? Some people did, some didn't. But she was literally accosted by this woman. And this woman told her she hopes she dies a painful death because she wasn't wearing a mask. And the scary thing about this now is called social shame. When you are trying to shame somebody else for doing what you think they should be doing, you are the one at fault, not the person, not the other person. When you have city officials, mayors of certain cities, calling for everybody in their town, everybody in their city to snitch on your neighbors, I'm sorry, it's called social shaming, and that is scary. You cannot do it. And if you're the one ratting on your neighbor, then you're the problem. My mother was accosted, literally accosted, and followed to her car and screamed at by a woman wearing a mask because my mother was not wearing her mask. That is scary.
That's back to say, like, it's the separation. It's sad to see that people. I'm a very like I said, I'm into like philosophy and all that. So it's like we really lose touch that like we've come to where we are because we've cared about our race, and we care about each other as individuals, and that's the only way we can ever move forward to ever achieve like peace or prosperity or anything as a race, is to like care for each other instead of being separated and not looking at everyone as different individuals, but everyone stemming from the same source, and we're all really the same deep down.
Yeah, I think there's a big problem in that people don't know how to treat other people. Where the lady that was wearing the mask, I am by no means on this lady's side. It is never a good thing to accost anyone. That is disgusting. That is a disgusting trait. But in her head, she probably felt, oh well, I'm wearing a mask. I'm doing what I need to be doing, and she isn't. And it's the problem is, like, you don't attack somebody for something. Let them go. They're living their life. You're living yours. Move on. And the same kind of thing happened with you, Isaac, when she went, because you walk near them. Now people just don't understand. Just let it go. Move on. Now I do that isn't to say that people shouldn't wear masks. I have the utmost respect for your mother, Eric. I love her. She is the sweetest. But I think everybody should be wearing a mask going out in public. Now, I don't mean to think she should be yelled at by any means, but I think it is important that if anybody does have the virus, that it is contained, and I think that is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent though right now. The mask.
So that's the thing that makes me think that this is going to go longer, because they just mandated the masks, so they're not opening May 18th. Like that's where my mind goes. Like if they're just mandating masks now, they're now going to be like, okay, anybody out in public now has to have a mask, which I still saw people out in public without a mask today. I almost was one of them, because I don't wear a mask ever. I don't. I maybe that's ignorant of me, and Andrew kind of was like, yeah, dude, like what if you're asymptomatic, or like, what if I did already have it, like, like I'm passing it on to other people. But in my mind, I'm also like, what if I'm passing on my antibodies? I don't know.
Yeah, I just view it as not like I'm giving in to the man, right, and just falling into the herd, into the line of sheep. But I genuinely have a great deal of respect for everybody in my community. And if the science, if some science is saying that if you do have a virus and you cough into a mask, you are less likely to give it to somebody else, I'm all on board. I'll be wearing a mask.
Yeah. It's going to be awkward for me, because I'm going to be in the mall selling, so I'm probably going to be forced to wear a mask. So
yeah,
so it's going to be smelly.
Especially it's so bad with coffee breath and with your beard. It's not fun.
No.
I have to wear a mask all day at the hospital, and if you haven't, that's why I had to shave, because I don't know what it was, if it was just bacteria in my beard and touching the mask. My face was itchy. It was unbearable. And then if you drink coffee, you have to face your own coffee breath. So it's kind of makes you accountable.
Yeah, it's kind of gross with all the masks. Like if you like, they're like $30 for 50 of them right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
how much
37.
they're price gouging. They're price gouging so bad, and people that are price gouging, like, shame on you. But it's gross. Like I had my mask on today because, again, I forgot. I went to the liquor store to get some Blue Moons, because that's our tradition. We go to Liberty and Union in Taunton, and we drink beers on Thursday and have business meetings. And it hasn't been our routine in a few weeks, and it's breaking our hearts. So we're on here. So I went to the liquor store and I almost forgot my mask. My friend Brandon was like, dude, do you have a mask? I'm like, oh yeah, I have this one in the car that I've worn like 3 times. And I put it on and it smelled so bad. I just don't want to. It's just gross, but I don't want to spend $30 on a mask right now.
Yeah. If for anybody else, because I've had that problem too, where it's like, even just like whatever, if you get like a little spritzer bottle, like a little spray bottle, you can spray the inside of your mask, and that'll neutralize the bacteria.
What about creating an immune? Is that your son? No, is that your daughter? I mean, your wife. Sorry.
That's my boy.
Hey, Carrie.
I was like, it's either your wife with a picture of your son as her profile picture, or it's your son.
We're really not convinced the masks are working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? They might not be. I've never done any of the studies. I just read the reports from the articles of the physicians, and I listen to the news, and I did see there was one study done at Harvard where they simulated a cough, and the cough was suppressed by the mask, and that seems logical to me. But as far as building immunity, it's true. If you have the virus and you're wearing a mask and you prevent it from going to somebody else, that person that may have got the virus, if you weren't wearing a mask, isn't going to develop immunity. So
Yeah.
I guess you have to wait for a vaccine, which
Wait,
I don't
so
even.
so our bacteria get passed on, but the antibodies that are attached to the virus or the bacteria don't get passed on.
Right. So the antibodies are circulating throughout your whole body. So you've got these special immune cells, the white blood cells, and they attach onto the specific proteins in the virus, and then they pretty much tell themselves to produce the key or the lock that is specific to that virus. So they produce thousands and thousands and thousands, and then the cell explodes, releasing all of these keys. Now, all of the other white cells pick up this key and says, okay, now I know what I need to attack. So it's pretty much giving all the other white cells the ability to attach itself onto the virus and neutralize it and kill it. So those aren't airborne, but there are experiments where people are taking plasma, which do contain antibodies, and donating it to people that are sick. And then those antibodies flow throughout the body of the sick individual and aid their immune system to fight the virus. But it's not 100%, and there's still people studying this and the effectiveness of it. Immunology is super complicated, and
It's all super complicated.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just a dummy.
Yeah, I'm right there.
I just try to surround myself with so many things that give me enjoyment, and just try. I feel like the more positive you stay throughout the whole thing, the better off you are.
Yeah, it's true. Mindset
You
is
need
everything.
to be positive.
Being depressed and having anxiety isn't good for your immune system or anything either.
It worsens it.
And you have to get outside. Like, get out. It's been beautiful out lately. Get outside. I mean, it's supposed to snow tomorrow night, I guess, into Saturday, which is like, the fuck, make up your mind. It's May. But this is why
Eric, have you been swimming? Eric, can you hear me?
Eric, can you hear Andrew?
Yeah, I'm losing you guys. Yeah, the connection's coming in and out. Sorry, man.
Andrew asked
have you been swimming?
Oh, have I been swimming?
Yes.
No swimming, man. The pool's closed and the ocean's a little chilly right now. I'm not jumping in. I'm not jumping in the water in the ocean right now.
I want to get started. I might get a wetsuit.
I got to get in there. Although I did hear the saltwater. I did hear saltwater kills the corona.
I'm hearing. I've actually been seeing some studies that cannabis really helps with it.
I got in the drink.
I've been seeing studies about that.
Oh, good. We're gonna have to give that a shot.
I've been giving it a shot all the whole way through quarantine.
Awesome. Yeah,
has it been before quarantine though?
Awesome, man. You don't have it, so much work.
Giving that a shot.
I don't know a single pothead that has the coronavirus, so so maybe we're onto something. Maybe CBD helps with it, and we'll figure those out and study some days. But yeah, it's been holy crap. It's almost been.
Yeah, you know what? We're learning as we go here with this whole thing. We are learning as we go.
Yeah, that's how it's like. This virus is like entrepreneurship. You just gotta learn as you go, and you're gonna have a lot of mess ups. And
that's it, man. You learn as you go. Hey, listen, you start. You can't wait for all the lights to be green. You got to correct course as you go. It's just that simple. You got to correct course as you go.
Exactly. So yeah, it's already been close to 2 hours. I can't believe it. Yeah. But if you want to, plug away with, especially for our audio listeners, they haven't really heard too much of like an audio plug of your businesses. But if you want to plug away at your businesses before we head out and everything.
Yeah. Really, obviously, Urban Acres, of course, that's what you guys are. But the bookstore. ReadMoreBooks.com. Jump on. I mean, you can order online. You can support us online. You can order to pick up. We do audiobooks, right? So if you go to the website, you can check out our audiobooks. We've got millions of audiobooks. You download, subscribe each month. We've got digital books, right? So you can do, if you read on your devices, we've got, digital books available. You can read on up to 5-6 different devices. So we've really got, everything that you need. We're local as well. We got new books, used books. If you've got used books that you want to get rid of, don't throw them in those bins. Give us a call. Let us know you're going to bring some in. We'd be happy to take those off your hand. We love your old books, things that have been sitting in your bookshelf for a little while. We find a lot of good stuff that's no longer in print, that's interesting and intriguing. And, people are looking for that. When they come in, they start shopping around again. When they're able to come in and start shopping around again, people are looking for some interesting stuff. So if you've got some unique stuff on your shelves, please don't throw it in those bins. Don't throw it away. If you got a lot of them, you've got more than a bag, give us a call. Let us know you're going to be bringing some down. We'll create some space and we'll take those in. Generally we take one bag at a time when you bring them in. We give you an in-store credit, right? So you come down, we add them up, we give you an in-store credit, and you can buy something else with them. Or you can just bring them down and donate them. That's fine too. Anything we don't keep for ourselves, we try to get back out of the community, schools or families that are in need or whatever. But yeah, so we take used books back. So if you got them sitting on your shelves, you're not reading them anymore, bring them into us. We'll give you a credit. But please, listen, we've been there 50 years this year. ReadMore Bookstore has been in that spot for 50 years. That's very unusual and very unlikely for a bookstore. Taunton isn't really the demographic for a bookstore when you think about bookstores, but we've been here 50 years because our community is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
People support us. They've been supporting us for a long time. We've lived through the Amazon onslaught when that first came out, the online thing, and we've lived through the digital onslaught. People are starting to come back to print books. So please bring us your used books and support local. That's all I can ask you to do.
Absolutely. And make sure if you enjoyed what you watched or listened to, you subscribe to the podcast or to whatever channel you're on. Thank you for listening and watching. It's been another amazing episode. I'm glad to be back here doing this fully again, podcasting. It's one of my favorite things about doing business. Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun, especially when we get together with you, and hopefully we'll be able to end this shutdown soon and be able to all get together on Thursdays like we regularly do.
and you know what?
Get back to work. I mean, we have to.
Urban
Not
Acres
hopefully,
is
we have to. We all
signing
got to
on.
get back. I mean, we all got to get back.
We're signing. Urban Acres is signing on potentially a new project too. So I think we'll be working together a lot more in the coming weeks and months. Thank you so much, Eric, for hopping on with us.
Awesome, exciting stuff. Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Thank you, guys.
All right, viewers, thank you so much for watching.
Later on, brother.
That was another episode of AA for Entrepreneurs. We'll catch you later.
Peace.